family signed a 536 million peso deal with F2 Logistics for the transportation of election-related materials for the 2022 polls.
Kung magtatamper siya, even in transit, madi-discover ka agad. Again, because the machine will print a zero report. Logistics provider, the one that is in charge of deployment, will not be able to affect the outcome of the elections.
The Commission on Elections says there is no clear case to disqualify Bongbong Marcos as candidate for the 2022 elections. This is after claims raised by retired Chief Justice Antonio Carpio said that Marcos's tax evasion case could be considered grounds for disqualification.
Filipinos are struggling with the health crisis and economic difficulties caused by the coronavirus pandemic at the same time that candidates are seeking their favor in the 2022 elections. What are the utmost concerns that must be addressed by candidates running for national positions? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. I'm Robbie Malampaya. With us online is Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, and Ed Dingao of One News is here with me in studio in Mandaluyong. Actually, wala pa pala si Ami.
Blanco pa.
Pero ano bang kami na-monitor mo ngayon?
Well, yung last minute na pag-file ng petition to cancel or disqualify the candidacy of Bongbong Marcos, filed by a group of anti-Marcos activists.
Not isang bayan.
Not isang bayan.
And not Justice Carpio.
It wasn't Justice Carpio himself who did it. Ang prominente lang na pangalan doon sa 6 na nakalista as petitioners is Father Buenafe, who's the head of the task force detainees of the Philippines. As well, there were other NGOs there, Balay, and so on.
And when you say last minute, it literally was the last minute, the last day to be able to file it. Diba?
Well, if you're looking for a cancellation of the COC, today that was the last day. If you're looking for a petition to disqualify per se, ang sabi ng iba, that can run as far forward as yung proclamation of the candidate.
Hindi kasi alam mo naman mga abogado, baka pati yung deadline pagtalunan muna before we get to the content of the complaint. In any case, we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the show. But tonight, we begin with politics still. We begin tonight with Senator Sherwin Gatchalian of the Nationalist People's Coalition. Good evening, Senator Gatchalian.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Ed. Good evening.
Hinahanap namin. Okay. Ayan na kayo sila. Now, of course, Senator Gatchalian is running for senator, as we said. But we do want to talk about your candidacy. But before that, I want to talk about Malampaya, if you don't mind. Because ito nga po, I mean, break it down for us. I mean, because, people have, I think, a good sense of why or what's controversial. But break it down for us in the most basic terms. What's problematic with what happened?
Well, Robbie, based on my analysis and the 3 hearings that we conducted, I described this transaction as lutong Macau because government laws and government circulars were bent towards accommodating this new operator, which is Udena Group. And I'll keep it very simple. No? Basically, in oil and gas, before you can sell or before an operator transfers to another operator, you need government approval. And government needs to undertake rigorous evaluation, particularly the legal, the financial, and the technical evaluation of this new operator. And the reason for this is to assure Filipinos that we have energy security because Malampaya is no ordinary asset. But based on our evaluation and based on the paperwork that we saw, the evaluation were bent towards this particular new operator, which is Udena, and government itself didn't follow its own circular, and government itself didn't follow the governing law, which is PD 87. And this is all in the hearings, and we conducted 3 hearings plus 1 hearing during the budget deliberation, and this came out during the public hearings.
Sir, my understanding, but tell me if I'm getting this right. My understanding is that at the very least, it's an immense missed opportunity on the part of government because of the right of first refusal. For example, buying into Chevron's shares or buying into Shell shares. But in this particular case, are we looking at a legal issue or a moral issue? In other words, may habol ba tayo sa legal or ito ba yung problema ng conflict of interest?
And there are two things, no? Just to harp on what you said earlier, there are two things. Basically, one is the government approval, which is governed by Presidential Decree 87. And then number two is what you were saying, the missed opportunity by PNOC. Again, no, I'll keep it very simple. PNOC had an opportunity to buy the Chevron portion, which is 45%.
Parang right of first refusal, kumbaga, parang ganun.
Yes, correct. Because they're existing na right now. PNOC is an existing owner of Malampaya. And before anyone can sell among the three, the three is given equal opportunity to buy out the entity who wants to sell. No? In this particular case, PNOC can exercise its right of first refusal in order to buy out or not to buy out the Chevron portion. And in my opinion, the government lost an opportunity because I remember clearly, no, at every budget hearing, PNOC will always tell us we want to be operating a successful oil and gas company. And Malampaya is already an operating oil and gas asset. And this can be a very good opportunity for PNOC to buy out and become instantly a true-blooded oil and gas company.
Okay.
And on top of that, in our own estimates, government lost approximately close to about 80 billion pesos in potential earnings from this Malampaya asset.
Senator, we're going to be joined by Ami Pamintuan of the Philippines, sir, but a quick follow-up lang muna dun sa point nyo. So, ostensibly, why didn't PNOC exercise their prerogative on first refusal?
Okay. Just to make it simple again, no, Robbie, what PNOC, the GM of PNOC told us that they did not buy out the Chevron portion because they feel that government is constrained by law to become a efficient operator. One of the laws that he particularly mentioned is the procurement law. He told us that if government will go into this particular asset with the procurement law and with other laws, it will be very difficult for government to be an efficient operator. But then again, this is where the confusion comes in, because if you look at all the hearings in the past, especially the budget hearings, and especially the service contracts that PNOC holds right now. Now, PNOC holds about 7 service contracts, meaning PNOC can drill, no, and can explore 7 wells or 7 locations in different parts of our country. Their direction, even if you look at their corporate profile, is to become an oil and gas company. But this is where the confusion comes in, because on the other side, when you ask for budget from Congress, you say, we want to be an oil and gas company, we want to explore different wells. But on the other side, you're saying, it's difficult for us to operate because we're constrained by the different laws, particularly the procurement law. Again, no, this is a confusing statement from PNOC itself.
Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
Good evening, Senator. Sorry I'm late. May hinahabol po kami story kasi merong groups na nag-file ng disqualification case against Bongbong Marcos. It shows how fluid the situation is, and November 15 is 2 weeks away. Kayo po, Senator, sigurado na ba yung Senate run niya? Because we understand at one point you were entertaining thoughts of running for Vice President.
Yeah, correct. At one point, I was, I told this in some of my interviews that I signified my intention to Mayor Sara to be her vice president if ever she runs for president. And the last time I had a conversation with her, she decided to go back as mayor, because she told me that she has a lot of things that she wants to finish in Davao. So with that statement, I decided to go back and run for re-election.
Pwede naman po kayong tumakbong Vice President. Saka, you belong to the Nationalist People's Coalition. That chairman is Senate President Tito Soto, who's running for as running mate of Senator Ping Lacson. Sino pong susuportahan ninyo ngayon na presidential candidate?
Well, right now, the party has a first time, meron kaming vice presidential candidate. Tito Soto is our chairman as well as our vice presidential candidate. So the NPC supporting him, and the NPC will be, of course, campaigning for his candidacy.
Sir, if you don't mind, I'll drill back down into the Malampaya issue. bukas pa yung well eh.
Nag-segue tayo ng konti.
Oh, yes, sir. Pero sir, hindi, my question is this eh. May habol pa ba tayo? Kasi naibenta na doon, naibenta na rito.
Yeah.
10%
Magandang
pa rin.
question yan.
Nasa 10% pa rin tayo.
Magandang question yan, Robbie. Ed.
Ed, sir. Yes, sir. So, may habol ba
There's
tayo?
Yeah, well, two things, no? Number one, we'll break this down one by one. Number one is, in my opinion, this evaluation is defective, meaning government didn't follow its own circular to evaluate. Therefore, its approval, because government approved the transaction, is invalid because the evaluation process itself is defective. So, with that being said, the transaction between Chevron and Odena needs to be evaluated further, and this is where we're still studying the possible different recourse, when it comes to the Odena and Chevron portion. So we're breaking it out into two. Number one is the government approval. That one we established that already, and then the other one is the transaction itself, which we are still studying. What are the possible actions that we can take?
You mean it's possible, it might even be possible to reverse the sale? That's a huge amount. That's
I have to reserve my answer first, Ed, because we're still in the middle of studying what can we do in order to make sure that public interest is protected. At the end of the day, what we want is public interest to be protected. Energy security is upheld. And the only way we can uphold energy security is by making sure that government only approves a qualified operator. That's why it has to undergo three things: legal, financial, and technical. And the reason for that government approval is to make sure that the new operator will be highly qualified and we will have energy security.
Sir, pahabol na lang before I leave it to my colleagues here. Just so that people are able to relate to the amounts involved here. Nabanggit ko kasi 80 billion ang nawala sa atin. You're looking at what? 80
in terms
billion,
of revenue, because
80 billion per
right now,
per 80 billion per year, per day, per month?
No, 80,
how big is it?
80 billion in the next until 2024, because the contract will end in 2024. So meaning from now to 2024.
Okay. So the amount we would have spent to buy in pales in comparison to how much we could be earning until 2024.
Well, the amount of the transaction, the value of the transaction is about 556 billion. $556 million. That's roughly about 28 billion pesos. That's the purchase price. But on the other side, this is already this asset is already earning. It's churning out revenues already, and that revenues goes to the three owners, which is Shell, Chevron previously, and PNOC. So with Chevron out, the earnings will now go to Odena, which is the new operator.
Okay, Senator, I'll use this to slowly, not necessarily slowly, but segue into the political questions here and the implications for the elections. The accountability mostly here that we're going to talk about, notwithstanding your hope na ma-reverse pa to, the accountability is fully on the public sector side at this point, diba? Sa DOE in particular. But first question is, how high should the accountability go? how high does this go? Does it stop with the secretary, or does it go even higher? And then secondly, related to that, because as you know, people are comparing this with Farmally, or what the Senate has been looking at, a lot of questions of corruption and lutong Macau, as you said. And how does Farmally, and now this with Malampaya, how does this frame all the discussions about corruption heading into the elections?
Well, definitely, Robbie, the secretary has a lot of influence and a lot of say in this transaction because in the circular, it's the secretary who should approve this transaction, and this approval is a precondition for the consummation of this transaction.
Yes,
So
but
it's
for
an
something
important-
pardon me, just to be more direct about it, for something this big, do you really are you really on that side of any of this conversation that will say no, it stops with the secretary, and then the other side, of course, is people saying it cannot possibly stop at the secretary?
I don't know, Robbie. I don't know. Based on my information, it's just based on the documents that were submitted to us, the documents that we requested, and our analysis. So so far, that's what we have seen. But I really don't know how far this transaction how far this transaction will go.
Okay, Senator, segue ko na uli sa politics. That's energy security and corruption that you're tackling. Ano pa po yung mga isyong gagamitin niya in running for the Senate?
Well, the other committees that I chair is Basic Education Committee. No? And this is more of a gut issue. Although energy security is a gut issue, but it's an indirect gut issue. No? Electricity is indirect, so to speak. But the other committee that I chair is Basic Education. And number one on my agenda is to go back to face-to-face classes. We need to go back to face-to-face already. Our schools have been closed for more than a year, and a lot of our students are already experiencing what we call the learning loss, in which they're not learning to their full potential. And even experts, especially economists, are saying that a lot of this, because of this prolonged school closures, it might be irreversible in terms of productivity. And the estimates are around 11 billion until 2040, in terms of productivity losses, meaning these students will not get better jobs, will not get higher income jobs, and that opportunity loss translates to productivity loss for our country.
Pero hindi na yan mahahabol for the school year, no? Because the minors vaccination will start only tomorrow.
Yes,
We still lack a lot of vaccines, and now people are talking about boosters. Paano matatapos yan?
well, good news is here in NCR, vaccination of adults have reached almost 97%, 98%. No, here in NCR and some highly urbanized city, the teenagers have already started. But we have to be more aggressive with the teenagers because this is the only way to boost up confidence of our students and also our parents. And we have enough vaccines, at least for NCR. And that's why we've been pushing very hard to reopen schools in highly vaccinated areas. The next policy study that we want the Department of Education to study is tying up the alert levels and the vaccination rates to school openings, no? Because those areas with high vaccination rates should be given a chance to open schools gradually.
And Senator, I'm sure a lot of people share your hope as well as the anxieties about bringing back face-to-face classes. But on the other side of that, I mean, this whole 1.5 years, almost 2 years of online learning has also, created some innovations. It's also forced some changes and some disruption. Is there anything from the experience of the past 2 years that you think is worth preserving and even institutionalizing?
Robbie, one of the things that we're pushing here in the Senate, at least in the Basic Education Committee, is a gradual digital transformation. I say gradual because digital transformation also has cost. No? And the future of learning, as we have seen during the pandemic, is what we call blended learning, wherein students will use the internet to learn, but they will also go to their classrooms to learn. In a country like ours, wherein we're highly vulnerable to calamities, to disasters, we need to have that mechanism to transition very fast whenever schools are shut. And one of the fastest way to transition is the use of internet. But like I said, no, internet also has costs, gadgets, and also access. That's why we need to slowly transition this. But the future learning will be using the internet as part of their learning experience.
The pandemic has also affected the way the campaign will be carried out. In fact, there's a warning from the COMELEC to politicians like yourself. Ingatan daw nyo yung mga gatherings nyo because you will be responsible for your supporters. Compared to your previous campaigns, are you actually finding it harder now or is it easier in social media a lot?
Yeah, well, from my experience, compared to 2016 when I ran for the Senate, before we used to get a lot of invitations, and these are physical invitations, and gathering 500 to 1,000 people would not be a problem. But this time around, it's difficult, because people themselves are afraid, even though they're asked by their local officials to go out and to participate, they're afraid to go out also. So it's very difficult for us. So we're actually grappling on what is the most efficient means of reaching out and communicating with our constituents. I see the rise of YouTube as part of the access points to our constituents. We also see the rise of Facebook in this particular case, but YouTube seems to be the new access point to our constituents, and we're exploring on how to reach them.
Yun ang problema, di ba? How to make people watch you on YouTube.
Yes.
How do you deal with the challenge? You have a lot of stuff out there.
Correct. We're still trying to get the feel of using YouTube. No, because before, when you advertise with traditional media, for example, TV or radio, it's already canned, and to a certain extent, the practitioners know what they're supposed to do. But in this particular case, I can see that the practitioners are also trying to grapple on how to communicate with people watching YouTube. But YouTube is really a phenomena during the pandemic, and especially when ABS-CBN was shut. I can see that a lot of people really transitioned into YouTube and Facebook, especially Facebook videos. I can see people transitioning that and spending more hours watching videos on those two websites.
Senator, I appreciate your being very candid here on the different media. And a serious question, TikTok and all of these other platforms. I mean,
that's one thing I haven't explored yet, Robbie.
I know, but is your data, are your analytics also saying now, you have to keep your eye on this?
Yes, definitely. In fact, TikTok, if you want to reach the younger segment, but I'm still trying to figure out whether I fit the TikTok persona, because
sir, di naman kailangan sumasayaw. Di naman kailangan sumasayaw.
Because I can see that, at least the TikToks that I've seen, you have to fit a certain profile, but I know I'm not like that, so I don't know if I will turn off more people if I go TikTok or attract more voters. But the key here is not only to be seen, but also to attract votes. That's the most important portion.
Well, sir, let me put it this way.
Yung sing and dance on stage. Di ba sa campaign, ginagawa rin yun?
Well, to some people, it may be effective. To be honest, I've never sang or danced on the stage, even when I was a local official. I try to be as pure as possible in terms of campaigning. But I don't know if that is still effective right now.
Yes,
but
it
has worked for me for the past few years. But definitely, we're exploring other innovations in campaigning.
Let me put it this way, sir. Even the major news networks are on TikTok, and we don't do sing and dance numbers.
Maybe that's something maybe I should explore. I don't know if Robbie is on TikTok.
Ay, wala pa. Nasa TikTok lang ako sa Twitter. Sinusundan ko kayo. Naantay ko announcement nyo kung kailan ang kasalan.
Mukhang segue yun.
Oo nga eh.
Wala pa ba?
Hindi siya
No, but seriously, it is something. I mean, I am curious about it. I mean, a lot of changes in store for you, whether or not you get elected. Where do you even have time to organize the other aspects of your life, which we would imagine is very important?
Well, Robbie, I've learned how to manage politics and personal life and family. I think over the years, I try as much. I try my best, no, to manage all of this. But you're right, no, because especially now in the Senate, that it demands a lot of analysis. It's not enough to go in and get perfect attendance, but the analysis and the research and the reading behind it, that's quite demanding. No? And putting that together to make sense is quite demanding.
Okay,
And
going back, just a bit more serious, again, on the serious sides of TikTok and social media and everything. Are you concerned, as a politician, di ba? I mean, it's not like you were a politician in the 70s. May digital platforms na naman when you became a politician. But notwithstanding that, the emergence of these new platforms and as important tips of the spear, it's important to reach out to get recognized, but are you concerned as well about, the potential dumbing down of the messages that here we're all trying to say the voter should be more intelligent and so on, and not to denigrate TikTok because I'm not there. I don't really know what's possible to do there. But are you concerned as a politician, as a public official, na if that's the platform, how do we educate the population as well?
Well, Robbie, I can't forget this comment by one political analyst that I consulted a long time ago when I was running for local office. Sabi niya, dancing and singing is just reinforcing that you're telling people they're dumb. No? So that's why it made an impression on me, and that's why I never did it. No, because I don't want to first of all, I don't view the voters as dumb. No? I think our voters are intelligent. Our voters are discerning. I'm hoping that they're becoming more discerning. It's not because they're taking selfies or they're taking pictures with you or they're screaming at you, they'll vote for you. We have to differentiate when people are kilig and people are going to vote for you. And those are two different things that I've observed throughout my career.
Sir, sa totoo lang, napag-google tuloy ako dun sa pinupunta ni Robbie kanina.
Oo nga, si Robbie.
Kailan ba?
Napag-google tuloy ako. Hindi ko na sasabihin kung ano.
Napawisan tuloy ako ngayon.
I will no longer go into my findings. Sige.
Hindi niya pinuntahan, hindi ko nahabulin.
Robbie, mataas yung antena to ni Robbie.
Okay. Sige, i-follow nyo na lang sa Twitter at sa Facebook si Senator Win Gatchalian. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Pero yan, may pabaon kami sa inyo at saka sa inyong mga followers. Senator Win Gatchalian po, tumatakbo po uli sa pagkasenador. Maraming salamat,
Thank you,
Senator.
sir.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
We'll need to take a break. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to the Chiefs here on One News, and now joining us is Professor Dindo Manhit President of Strat-based ADR Institute for Strategic and International Studies. Professor, good evening and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good evening,
Hi.
Professor.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, good
Yes, sir.
evening.
Sir, of course, we want to talk to you about politics, pero let me start off with this kasi may breaking story kami kanina. A group of activists filed a petition for the disqualification of Bongbong Marcos based on his conviction on failure to file his income tax returns from 1982 to 1985. It's now pending with the COMELEC. Kakafile lang nila ngayong hapon. First of all, I'd like to ask you for how do you view that? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I heard of it just a few hours or 2 hours ago on this filing of disqualification. I think this issue will be a test for COMELEC. That are we a country ruled by law, or will they simply allow if they will find that the petitioner's case itself will have basis for law, they have to find ways to disqualify or even look into it. But of course, we know the process might be tedious legally, so it might take time. So will this drag into the election campaign, just like other cases filed in previous elections against other candidates? So that's what remains to be seen.
Pero sir, given the high numbers of Bongbong Marcos in the surveys, wouldn't this be a very volatile issue?
I'm not sure what survey you're referring to. I've not seen any survey where he's high.
Well, sir, yung
Hindi ba leading siya sa Pulse tsaka sa
sa
SWS?
SWS.
No, there's no SWS or Pulse survey. Who was leading was Sara Duterte.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
We're talking about
Pulse.
relatively high in terms of numbers.
Yeah, relatively high.
He was number 2.
He was in a statistical tie with Isko Moreno in the last Pulse survey. And there's no social weather station survey except commissioned one that we don't know really who commissioned, that
Yes,
was
sir.
spread through social media.
Yes, sir. But given that, I mean, given these factors, he has a sizable support base kahit paano. He's
a major
very
candidate.
active on social media. His support is very active on social media. How do these things factor in dun sa disqualification case?
The disqualification case could be an irritant, depending on how the candidate will address this issue. But if there's substance to that disqualification case, like in this case, there's also that angle of tax evasion. I've not really read the whole petition. I just heard about
Yes, sir.
it.
Tax evasion
But if there is,
and failure
if
to file in
there's-
ITR.
Okay.
if there's really tax evasion, this is a question of integrity
Okay.
already.
But-
So really, it's it's a challenge also to the petitioners to lay down their facts, not only as written in their petition, but also to really state their case in the COMELEC and use this opportunity to question integrity, not only of Bongbong Marcos, but the Marcos family per se, because it will reflect a history that they have tried to rewrite, or a narrative that they try to cover up. I think that's the intent of the petitioners. So we'll see how, it's too early to see how people will react. But it could be a burden, especially if these drugs and other issues are related to it can be thrown, not necessarily on the case itself, but that can really derail any attempt by Bongbong Marcos to project or position himself as one that has integrity, that can be trusted, that breaks away from the past of the Marcos legacy.
Okay. Dindo, in the meantime, let's set aside the complaint against Bongbong Marcos. Is it settled in your mind who the players are? Is the table set, or are you still waiting for Sara Duterte?
There's always that possibility, Robbie, that given the games that the supporters of President Duterte plays, they've really maximized this provision in our election law on substitution. So what's good to know is that, that's why I asked you about what surveys we're talking about, because it remains to be seen. It's good to see who will come out by November 15 as the final list. Then maybe look at how people rank at the time, and that could be our baseline going to the election season. But right now, there's always that possibility of still a Sara substitution or even a Duterte substitution at the vice presidential level.
Well, since we're into surveys, the previous, I think the past two surveys have shown a steady decline in the numbers of President Duterte himself. You think he will also be pulling down the numbers of his daughter?
Something that we should take note of in the last Pulse Asia survey, Sara Duterte went down by 8%. So that is reflective also of what we saw, given that it's the same survey data or survey period whereby the president's administration, and specifically issues that are top concern of the public, the president was way below 60%, was even below 50% on economic issues. So this image of a popular president that prevented politicians even to become more independent, suddenly the balloon bursted, and suddenly that's why I've noticed some of these candidates, even the senatorial candidates, started filing as independents. One of them is your former anchorman in TV5 that really filed as an independent. So people are staying away from that brand. I'm quite surprised, too early to stay away, but they're all noticing it. Maybe they're seeing it in their own internal surveys.
What changed, Dindo? Kasi last year, I remember in November, he had the highest rating, di ba? 80.
It was
And,
88%.
and
88%.
people were already suffering at that time. Lives and livelihoods, all were suffering. It's the same now. Anong nagbago? This year, what changed?
Yes. Something that we saw as we dug deep into the performance of government was we started looking into how his administration performed vis-a-vis issues. And there was semblance of as if the president was not being made accountable for the bad performance of the administration. We even saw it until June of this year. It was still at 82% and 75% with social weather station. So the question that stuck in my mind was, when will the public make the president accountable?
Yeah.
And that's what we saw with this latest survey, not still low, but a steep decline in the 60s.
And sustained.
And if it keeps on going down, imagine where we'll be come election season, which is still a few months from now, 3 to 4 months from now. So it's something that any candidate would not like to bring going into the election season.
Yeah.
But what turned it, I believe, is it's something related to some of our commission surveys, commission questions in both surveys.
Yes.
When we asked, what are your top concerns that you would like candidates for national elections to deal with in 2022? 4 out of 5 of the top 5 were actually economic issues. But in between is corruption issue. So we saw people suffering from presyo ng bilihin, high prices of basic commodities, salary or lack of jobs. That leads to the third issue, which is hunger and poverty. But in between them are corruption. So when we crossed into this investigation on Farmily, I chat people. I call it COVID corruption. You're stealing. There's corruption. And it's reflective of the type of people that we saw answering in the Senate. And maybe when the president started defending this procurement, it really backfired. And I heard that as the Senate also goes into looking into the budget proposal for next year, which is their constitutional mandate, they will look into other procurement of vaccination, procurement of other COVID-related interventions. And that might open more issues with regards to procurement challenges, and which is basically COVID corruption.
But sir, how did the president's declining numbers compare to the decline in the numbers of previous presidents in their last year?
Because I think the best way to compare the president, because of his high ratings, was Aquino. no? As compared to previous president, which was Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and also Joseph Estrada. So with Aquino, it was 2 years before that, the Mama Sapang. So sometimes it's triggered by an event, by an issue. In this case, it's the family issue or COVID-19 corruption. So, but what's worse, I think now, is that side by side with it, people are suffering.
Yeah.
So imagine that's a double whammy for the voters themselves. So even the candidate of the president, whoever that candidate is, will be asked to account for that. You are the candidate of the president and you need to account for it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be identified with an administration that is perceived, no, based on these investigations, have stolen or have allowed the misuse or abuse of public funds during a pandemic.
Yeah. On the other side of that, Dindo, I'll try to be the optimist here and play on the notorious alleged fickleness of the Filipino public and the Filipino voters. Now, we're heading into a reopened economy. Vaccines are coming. Nasa 80% na ngayon supposedly ang full vaccination sa NCR. They're saying that supply will not be an issue anymore by the end of the year. In other words, we might be entering 2022 with people having found some footing again in terms of livelihood and also a bit braver in going out. And they're saying, "Oy, things are improving." On balance, how do you see that playing out in the voters' mind as we enter 2022?
That could be a positive for a candidate. I agree with you, Robbie. But question is, these are all plans of government, just like the plans that they told us last year. But we're still where we are at this time. So it's a lot of wish list that can turn into reality. But if you're the other side, you would like to continue making the government accountable. Procurement of Sinovac, no, which is the least efficient in terms of protecting us. No? And I heard from some senators saying that it's not even government to government. A lot of things that might come out and that will really be on top of the mind of the public. Remember, Aquino had a very good economy, but still, with one issue like a Mama Sapan, he was weakened and his own candidate. So it depends also on all sides of the political fences or alliances that will be out there by February. How they'll use this issue to counter, to support. No? So it's at the end of the day, elections is about positioning.
Okay.
Positioning in the voter's mind. How do you position yourself vis-a-vis the issues that are critical to the voters at that moment?
Okay. Let's
and
talk about...
we're actually studying that. And our studies will come out in the next few weeks. National survey.
And let's talk about that. Let's talk about positioning. It's only been a little more than a month since candidates started positioning. People talking about healing. People talking about, hindi ako sa isang banda o sa kabilang banda, nandito ako sa gitna. Which of the messages so far from any of the candidates do you think are working, and which of the messages do you think will not bite?
It's hard to answer if I will use my hat as a political scientist, because it will lead me to punditry. I can only answer that based on science, and data is still being run nationally for us in our area. So, but everybody claims to have a better positioning. Like we are the true opposition, the shift from yellow to pink. But two candidates would like to be in the middle. I'm referring to Senator Ping Lacson and Mayor Risco. Or in the part of former Senator Marcos, I heard him say it in his press conference that I am the candidate of Duterte. So he's risking that kind. No? Or in the case of Senator Pacquiao, it's about coming from the poor, concerning for the poor. It's how people see you carrying that message. But I'll share some realities to everyone also. That at times, the one that normally attacks so much in an election season don't get the votes.
Yes.
There is a historical data for that. That's why you'll always see that. I call it political triangulation. The one that can bet the best of both sides of the opposing, not ideological, but the opposing point of view, get to win in the national elections in the Philippines. So it's something that has to be seen and appreciated by different camps. How do you position yourself there? And you have to relate it also to what are the people looking for, really, come May or a post-COVID. We might be improving our lives by then, but would you still like the leadership of this administration,
So,
given the hardship that you encountered? Or would you like a fresh face? Or would you like somebody, a group that claims we are the true opposition? We've been consistently against this president. So again, these are all questions that need to be answered, especially as we go into the election season, because we need to track it because of how voters shift based on issues thrown against each other, or even performance during election debate.
Dindo, you mentioned that the president's defense of Michael Young and the family people helped bring down his numbers, no? So you think the numbers are reversible if he stops defending them, for example? Or if he says, if he issues stronger statements condemning them, for example, you think it's reversible?
He cannot condemn them anymore because it was out in the public. Is it reversible? The popularity or the decline can be reversed unless the other side, and when I say the other side, there are different political forces, given it's an election season now, not only the opposition, but even senators who are running as independent senators and posturing as independent senators might use that period. So what I'm watching out, Ami, is the November period.
Yeah.
When the budget has been transmitted from the lower house for final discussion, deliberation in the Senate. I see the senators, and you cannot blame them. They are performing their constitutional duty of oversight. It's not about legislation. We call it oversight function of the Senate. And I see it as an opportunity for re-electionist senators running under VP Lenny Robredo, for independent senators who are allied with Senator Ping and Senate President Soto. So there will be opportunities for that. So they will push and make the president more accountable. On the part of the government, they would like to project that there's nothing wrong with their procurement.
Yeah, and his numbers will affect, as I mentioned, it is affecting his daughter, no? And this daughter said she wants to stop to the Run, Sarah, Run caravan. Do you believe her?
It's possible. All her statements really since October was about her or lack of interest in running for the national office since she filed in Davao. But as I've said, you'll always feel this history that this is the only family that keeps on saying they're not interested.
All right.
But groups around them keep on pushing it forward as if they're trying to build a bandwagon. So you tend to say 50-50, would you believe that or not? So for me, I just would like to wait until November 15. But again, something that I would joke you guys here in the show is that when the Pulse Asia came out, all you report was Sara leading instead of Sara down by 8%. That should have been the analysis there. Because we should have seen it from the previous number of 28. And considering the father was 82%. So that means at that moment, Sara Duterte was not already getting enough of the so-called public support of the president. Then in September, it even went down to 20, while the president also went down. So it's something to really think of when you look at these numbers that came out last September.
Yeah. Dindo, on the other side naman, I'm curious about yellow. Yeah, obviously,
Yes.
yellow became not only faded, not only tarnished, it became a burden. I mean, I don't think they would have shifted to pink if yellow or whatever people think of, pagka tinawag na dilawan, may may kagat yun. And therefore, there was a shift to pink. Pink brought on a certain a moment of euphoria and really a groundswell of support. But my question is, in the first month, from what you're seeing, can they get away with this? Can the opposition get away with leaving yellow behind? Or at the rate things are going, is there a danger of pink just becoming the new yellow?
There's always that danger, Robbie, of becoming just the new yellow. And euphoria needs to go beyond the weakness of the group since 2016, that they were not converting at the critical demographic of our voters, which is a social class D. They continue to be noisy, strong in the ABC crowd, which is what, 11% of our voters. So that's a great challenge. And I think they're doing their best to reach that. Is it enough? Is the message enough? So that's why I think they even call their campaign People's Campaign. So they're trying to reach to it. Still early. They have built a momentum, but is it a momentum that cuts beyond their traditional support base? Because they had that support base until it was destroyed in 2016 election. So can they capture that again? That's a great challenge to this campaign of VP Leni Robredo.
But are you seeing them with a better chance this time, considering there are middle forces candidates presenting themselves as middle forces, apart from the pure administration candidates?
I've always believed that for the group of VP Leni or any of the candidates that will define themselves as opposition can only win if they really also look at what I call the triangulation approach, whereby you don't simply attack and attack, but see what can be built on, but also focus on the weakness of the administration, not from your point of view, but from the point of view of the voters, and build on that. And the story of Ocho Derecho reflects that. What you perceive as the weakness of the president was not the weakness from the point of view of the voters. So you need to spend. The first thing I do when I used to advise different campaigns is the first thing I ask them, instead of spending so much on a lot of the activities, have you spent on your baseline survey? How are you really in the eyes of the public? Not how are you in the eyes of your supporters. No? And that's the first thing I ask. Because a campaign has to have that and needs to accept what they find it. No? That's why, for me, what we did as an institute watching from the outside, we did our own baseline. So it's running right now. Hopefully, I can share it with you guys in the next 2 weeks when we hit the 15. Then we'll see if it works. The pink works, being the middle works, no? Or being the candidate of the president, if it's President Bongbong Marcos. Then we'll see an objective, scientific approach to understanding the public. It's not about, we saw this. No? I was telling some friends from both sides, when there were a lot of these motorcades happening, pink motorcades. I noticed Isko Moreno moving around in those provinces with the masses, eating in eateries. So there's two different worlds. No? Or Manny Pacquiao giving away money. I don't know if it will work. So at times it's simultaneously happening in different places in our country. Or while we are doing motorcades, we see Bongbong Marcos buying as much spot as he can in YouTube, hitting more people. No? Or Isko Moreno buying more TV spots and reaching the masses in their favorite shows. So this is again a way to ask ourselves, are we doing the right thing in reaching a broader voter base, which is the social class D, suffering so much from economic consequences of this pandemic, and hating corruption because of the failure of ayudas and assistance. Who can claim that issue will be the president in 2022.
Dindo, we're certainly looking forward to you sharing those insights. But one quick question lang. speaking of being more scientific about, what's the scientific way of looking at voters in Mindanao? Whether or not Sara is running?
They're not as big as people think. 56% of the voters will come from Luzon. And you need to win in Luzon to win in Mindanao, to win in the country. But Mindanao will have a few provinces which are big. But there are also big provinces in Visayas. So you can strategize by building a strong campaign in Luzon, just like any president. I've always argued that here in our Bilang Pilipino, I think 2016, and when I remember, Robbie, we were tracking it with SWS then, and I said, you needed Luzon. And on the third week of April 2016, President Duterte took the lead in Luzon. So it's not Mindanao that matters. Really. It's how you build that campaign, actually in 30 of the biggest provinces in our country. And the national capital region is 7 million voters already. Calabar zone is the biggest. Central Luzon is the third biggest. The so-called Mega Manila normally tends to drive a bandwagon nationwide. Mindanao tends to follow after a while, especially if there's no Mindanao candidate.
For now.
For now.
In any case, once we answer those questions, we'll definitely have you back. Dindo Manhit of the Strat-based Albert Del Rosario Institute. Maraming salamat.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's all for this special edition of The Chiefs. We hope it was discussed here. We'll keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Malampaya.
I'm Mami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.